and welcome to the CXO Masterclass, Future-Proofing Your Sales Organizations During Times of Change and Uncertainty. In this episode, we're going to focus on redesigning your sales strategy post-uncertainty and future-proofing your sales organizations. Our special guest today is Reinitz. He is the head of sales, New York Enterprise Digital Natives with Google Cloud. Welcome, Aaron.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Aaron, we are definitely in this different phase of uncertainty, certainly when it comes to sales. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen overall for this past year and really in the upcoming year.
Sure. I mean, I think that no one can ignore changes that are occurring in the macroeconomic environment, and that's influencing our customers. That's influencing how we organize ourselves and organize our energy. And what's remaining true and consistent is getting comfortable with change is a constant. I know that sounds easy to say at any time, but it's just part of being able to deliver value consistently over time. And two, leading with empathy. I think that it's really easy to think about yourself in a moment of pressure and stress, and it requires just a little bit more energy and a little bit more work to think of the counterparty, the other, your customer, your partner, your teammate, and allow that to animate and inform your behavior as much as possible. And I think that if you can do those two things well and consistently, be comfortable with change as a constant, lead with empathy, lead with seeking to understand, you're really going to be well equipped to handle whatever is going to come your way, because at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to control that. So it really is up to us to be resilient and build those skills to be able to continue to deliver value and continue to find success for ourselves and for our companies.
When it comes to your team, your internal team, how has that adjustment then been, when it comes to trying to meet goals within your organization?
Yeah, I think that the way that we think about it is that, when we think about our goals, our success is our customer success. It's really as simple as that. And if we are doing, well, let me take a step back. My team in particular works with companies who are typically software as a service, digital natives, sort of born on the internet types of companies. And as an infrastructure provider, we're in a unique place where they're putting their business in our hands, right? We're providing the core technology that enables them to go out into the market and deliver value for in a B2B sense or to their end consumers. And when they grow, we grow. If they have challenges with growing, we have challenges with growing. So the philosophy that we have going into every interaction is, how are we thinking not about just the value of our product or the capability of our services organization or whatever that statement is about us, how are we reframing that to be, what about them can we be participating in? How can we be bringing them new ideas? How can we be helping them think creatively about their existing challenges? And then ultimately, if we're doing that well and we're consistent about that effort, the goals will come. The goals will be resolved. The quotas, the targets, the growth. Because again, if they are growing, we are growing. If we are bringing good ideas to the table, we will help them grow.
Well, you're talking about then these times of uncertainty for your sales team. How do you meet these goals during all of these uncertain times in the economy?
I think that thing one, it's about focusing in on the things that you can control. If you're really satisfied with your performance in the areas that you can directly control or influence, you're doing your job, right? If you can be creative to make sure that you have a really good point of view and a lot of clarity about what are the things that are within my remit that I'm aware of, getting updates on, kind of making sure that I intimately understand. And in the areas where I'm influencing, am I thoughtfully doing that in a way where I'm not overextending, but I'm also kind of involved in the things that are not directly hands-on for me? Then you're doing what you can. And then there's going to be a lot of things that are outside of your control, and that becomes a conversation about energy management, because what you don't want is to be spun around the axle trying to worry about stuff that you're not going to really have, or no one's asking you your opinion for, nor will you have any influence in, because those things are just going to wear you out, and you're not going to have the right energy and the right mindset when the things come back to you that where we do need your input, where we do need your energy, we do need your effort. So as I'm coaching my team, thing one, kind of bifurcate out what's in my control, what's not. How am I doing a good job here? Awesome. And then am I kind of observing this piece as best I can? Um, and then I think the other piece of it is I think a statement about community building. I think there's something really powerful about surrounding yourself with folks who are going through the same experience as you in that moment in time. I think that it feels very hard to go through uncertainty and to go through change and to go through challenging moments when you feel like you're all alone. And that's been, sadly a byproduct of this isolation that's come from remote work. Fortunately, we have an incredible office culture at Google. We have an incredible commitment to community building across lots of different dimensions, not just your identity as a seller, but your identity as a Googler and your identity beyond that, as a human. And I think that those will pay rich dividends. The more you give to those communities, the more you will get from a supporting perspective. Because at the end of the day, these are moments in time, but it's a much longer game.
But we've been through, we've been through the pandemic, we've been through lockdown. Now we're going through this whole economic uncertainty. It feels like we're just getting punched. And as you said, it's kind of like, how do we continue to keep motivating our team to feel like, okay, you're not alone. It will get better. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And how can we still keep our ideas fresh?
Yeah, and I think it's step one is motivating yourself. Like if you can't bring that energy from yourself, you're not really coming from an authentic place when you're trying to give advice to others. So being a pretty strong student of being self-aware and understanding how you're experiencing all of these issues, because you're going through it too. You as a leader are going through it just as much as they are, and having as much control of that you can, and also advice that I get often and I try to give to others is trying to be gentle with yourself too, because I think anybody who views themselves as kind of a high performer and views their career as really important to their identity is going to be a very tough critic of themselves. So how do you play that mental game in such a way that, again, invest in the things you can control, observe the things you can't, manage your energy, bring your authentic self to every opportunity you can, and it will work out. It will provide the benefit you want. Maybe over a longer time period than you want, but it will.
You've been at Google now for 5+ years and you've grown with the company. What was business as usual like during the pandemic?
The pace was higher. The pace was faster. The ability to focus to create more quality was there too, because you had more focus time and more quiet time, less free of distraction. The personal cost, I think, was something we had to really keep an eye on, just because folks didn't have enough outside of work. Sometimes they were just stuck in their house with their partner or with their family, and that was really, really hard. Um, and then I think the other piece was this general sense of excitement that the world was changing in context to like how digital is just a role. We were just watching how video conference just became the norm, and it was almost there, but like people were still kind of calling each other and getting on streaming video, even more immersive experiences. Like I'll give you an example. We did a DEI training and initiative across the organization that was virtual reality led, and it was all about putting yourself in the experience of the individual, going through some challenging moment at work through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not sure we would have been able to do that had we not been remote and not had the resources that we have to invest in those types of things in new and creative ways. So I think that a company like Google is very well suited to the challenges of those moments, and it gives me a lot of confidence, Joy, as we look forward to the next couple of years with economic and fiscal change coming, that we're going to be equally have an equal advantage to be able to react quickly to those things as well.
So, Aaron, what are your key priorities as a sales leader?
Thing one, priorities are, of course, reaching and exceeding the expectations set by the organization. Myself, my team, and the individuals who support me and support us, the organization. I think thing two is consistency, so ensuring that everybody who participates in these programs or in supporting the organization and selling are meeting or exceeding for themselves, because that's the fuel that gets them engaged in the organization. That's how they're personally compensated. That's how we retain the best talent, is that we have, people feeling like they're all participating in the upside. I think that thing three is, making the appropriate investments in training, in coaching, in supporting the organization, supporting the individuals who need help where I can provide it, or where the organization can provide it. That's obviously really critical. And I think lastly, I would say it's about energy management, like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, like just making sure that people have the right tools to navigate a moment where it is uncertain. There are going to be moments where you just don't, like, you feel like you're beating your head against the wall. Like that is going to come in any career in any moment. But have we done the right things to be able to give people the tools to get through those times and use them as an opportunity to grow? So I think that fourth piece around the culture that we hold is going to be just as important, if not more important, now than ever.
So, what are some changes then that you're seeing within your customers then, as far as their approach to their business?
For a long time, I think in the economy, it was well understood that growth was the number one goal. And now I think that the expectation has shifted somewhat, where yes, you must grow, but you also have to be really thoughtful about where you put your dollars. So that only influences our dialogue, in the sense of, okay, well, where are we shifting our energy to support you? Are we maybe shifting gears and taking our eyes away from just growth, just customer acquisition? Are we getting into, how do we lean in to help you optimize and get more with what you have with us? And that's something that we want to do in a really proactive way. So I think it's that pressure is fairly universal across all sectors and indices. But I think companies that are in the pure play technology space, especially in the software space, they're now really building new muscles around efficiency, and around getting the most juice to the squeeze, so to speak, to be able to fund the next 2, 3, 4 years of growth out of the capital that they have visibility to and control of.
Are you finding your customers are asking more for less? Like,
As long as there's some self-awareness, as long as there is some transparency, as long as there is a constructive tone to the approach there, then great. I mean, this is business. I mean, people need to do the right thing for their investors, need to do the right thing for their customers, need to do the right thing for themselves as shareholders or interested stakeholders in the success of their company. So I'll never fault a customer or an organization for trying to get the best deal they can, or trying to extract the maximum value they can. And I'll often enter those conversations with I'm big on transparency up front, and I'll say, I'll tell you what makes me successful in this moment. Like, let's lead there. I want to learn, I want to understand what makes you successful, and I'll share with you what makes me and my team successful. And sometimes you can be surprised that those things are not zero sum. It's not necessarily like a game theory type of thing. Like, sometimes there's ways where everyone can benefit. And secondly, I think that there's a major opportunity to differentiate yourself and your brand when you kind of lead with that transparency and that willingness to cooperate. I think it's very difficult to get to that state of mind, and I think that I am often telling my team and anyone who will take advice from me that we're often guilty of the sins of others who came before us in similar roles, right? So if you're the third call or the third meeting of the day with your customer, and the people who came before you were not collaborative, were not transparent, were not willing to have a meaningful dialogue about what makes them successful, this is your opportunity to show how different and thoughtful you are. And that will pay a dividend. Maybe not near term, but in the long term, it certainly will. So view that as an opportunity.
do you think that your customers are willing to at least though make the investment when it comes to, again, improving their brand, improving their product?
Yeah, I think that the bar is just higher. The bar is higher, and the onus is on us to illustrate the value. So sometimes it means, hey, you have to spend more. I mean, if we're talking about like spending more money, as an example, then the ROI needs to be there, and it needs to be really well understood and driven by metrics and driven by logic and intellectual honesty. I mean, it's not uncommon that we're working with CFOs at our customers, and those are the most ardent fiduciaries inside of an organization, period. So they're going to have a high litmus test for, does this actually work or not? Does this actually move the bottom line for us or not? So I think, to answer your question directly, Joy, I think yes, they are willing to make the leap. However, the bar is higher for us to show, not just tell, that the return on investment will be there.
So, what do you tell your sales teams then to make sure that they keep the customers engaged during these times? Aside from empathy, aside from transparency, what advice do you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge believer in being an ardent student of the customer's business. So I think that, especially when you have a publicly traded company, you have resources to understand their business that are extremely rich. The earnings calls, the investor days, the just all the formal filings that go in front of the SEC. I think that there is so much data and so much story in all of that content that the expectation is, when we talk to them, we have a point of view. And we say, hey, I understand that you're trying to get your gross margin target from X to Y, and these are the things you're doing. I've been thinking about that too, and here's some stuff that we think we could try to contribute to that goal. Like, that is the conversation we should be having, rather than, hey, we have this product and it's 10% cheaper. Like, that may be true, but that by itself isn't going to be enough to inspire change or inspire anything that's strategic. So it's often going to have to be a combination of, is there a cost efficiency in what we can offer? Is there an operational overhead efficiency because of the nature of whatever the product can do? Is there a differentiation from a technology perspective that makes them more innovative or compete better in their cohort? And also attaching that to the narrative that the CEO or the CFO has brought to the board of directors and their shareholders to say, these are the three things I need to execute on this year to view myself as successful. If we're kind of bringing all those things together, that's how we're relevant. So you asked, how am I coaching my team? It's about investing in that intellectual curiosity about the nature of the customer's business, their wins, their losses, their pride, their pain. Like, what does all that mean, and how can you have an authentic conversation with them about those things, especially in a moment where the pressure is on, because that's where true relationships really develop, is in high pressure moments, not when everything's easy.
Can you just talk about the role of design thinking in post-recession selling, given a consumer's behavior?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's pretty universally understood that the era of cheap money is over. Like, that was like kind of a post financial crisis theme. Low interest rates and easy access to capital. That is generally sort of understood to be behind us, at least for the time being. So, what does that mean for us as an organization? I think that it kind of anchors back on a lot of the stuff we've talked about, in the sense that we have to be really attuned to the core values of the organizations that we serve, to make sure that our messaging and our staffing and our offerings and our strategy, everything, because if you think about a go-to-market organization, like, sales is a piece of it, but there's also a role from how we market. There's a role in how we organize our products. There's a role in how we message about how we package our products. There's things within our finance work that we think about. There's kind of all this stuff that kind of comes together in a cohesive way to address the opportunity with our target market. And we're in a really competitive market. We have really strong competition that's doing really great work out there. And we have to be able to find ways to break through with our message, break through with our people, break through with our brand. And that's going to mean that there are going to be realities in the economy that are going to affect everybody. But what's within our control is how we react to that. that's where our choices lie. So kind of going back to these principles of how do we design something new, um, it will have to be um, holding a higher bar for ourselves for the value that we're looking to create in the minds of the customer. It's going to have to say, it can't just be, hey, we're going to save you money, or hey, we're going to help you grow 10% in your market share. It's going to have a very clear demonstration of exactly how, what data we used, and what inferences we made against that data to provide our confidence that we think that that's the right path for them and for our relationship with them.
When you're looking for new sales opportunities, let's say new clients, what are you looking for? Like, how do you approach this? Uh, just to kind of think out of the box, because obviously you'll have your loyal clients that you have, your loyal customers. But when you're talking to your sales team saying, okay, we want to branch out, we want to keep on growing, what are you looking for then in a new customer?
Yeah, I think it starts with, what story do we have to tell that's differentiated, and why is that story um, important to them? So in other words, if they have a place that they need to grow, that they need to improve, they have an opportunity to capture their share of market. Do we have a capability that perhaps our competitors don't, or that we're, that Google is viewed as a leader in, and can we bring that to them to help them leapfrog their competition, or rethink how they do business? And if that is true, then we'll have a much easier time getting attention from that customer. Especially if historically they haven't really had a relationship with us. So I think it starts with do we have something that's worthwhile for them to pay attention to? I think it's also back to what we spoke about being strong students of their business. So can we come with a point of view that shows that we have that we've built credibility? That, hey, we're not just going to come and tell you a story about ourselves. We want to have a conversation about your organization and what role we could potentially play. All those things kind of come together.
What about your customer? I mean, have you noticed any sort of shift with their needs?
Yeah, I think customers are certainly capital conscious. I mean, there's
Mm.
no question about that. So we universally encourage our teams to be proactive in that discussion, coming rather than waiting for them to come to us. Go to them with ideas on how they can be more efficient with how they use our tools, or how they spend money on infrastructure. I think that that's a major moment in credibility building, and in many cases will open up a dialogue about something that is going to yield growth for both parties. But if it's happening to us, that's a different dynamic than us trying to lead that. And I think we owe it to them to bring good ideas to the table in those moments.
So, with that being said, as you were talking about the whole period of economic uncertainty, what does it look like for businesses who are relying on direct sales to drive revenue?
I think there's going to need to be even more emphasis on coaching and development. I think that's thing one. I think that a rising tide lifts all ships. And there's this great Warren Buffett quote about the tide goes out and you see who's been swimming with their swim trunks and who without. And I think that there's going to be a bigger emphasis on um, ensuring that you have the right people in the right roles set up for success, and the right skills are being um, developed, the right coaching is in place, the right support structures are in place for those people, so that when you have folks out there representing your brand in the market, they're taking advantage of every opportunity they can to grow share, or to make their customers successful.
So, who's in the driver's seat then when it comes to managing and shifting organizational responsibilities? Is this a joint venture then? Is it mutual with both the customer and your sales team?
I think it depends the nature on your relationship with that customer. I think you have some customers who look to, like, we're very fortunate in some situations, and I'll say some, where the customer is looking to us for that kind of dialogue. How are you thinking about this? Because we have a rich story to tell about it, because every company is going through all this stuff in their own way. And I think that in those moments, we have a great opportunity to kind of share best practices. We've been thinking about it for a really long time. Then you have some companies who want to treat their technology providers in a different way, where it's really more transactional. And if that's the case, then we do our best to tell our story about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and it's up to them to decide if they want to absorb that and take that into account or not. So it really is. It kind of comes down to people. I mean, it's so funny. We think about organizations as these big monolithic entities, but it really is just these individual relationships that dictate the nuance of what ends up happening.
So when it comes to your own sales teams, can you talk about just then some key steps to rebuilding sales teams during post periods of uncertainty? What kind of key messages or key tips do you give your sales team?
Well, we're a very data-driven organization, thankfully. So it starts with having a really articulate view of what is working and what isn't, and a thesis as to why. And there's lots of different dimensions to think about in context of that. There's lots of ways to kind of peel back and say, well, is it a product? Is it about product? Is it about product market fit? Is it about price point? Is it about who is it the end customer? Is it about our people? Is it about marketing, messaging? There's lots of moving pieces there. And candidly, I feel very fortunate to work in a place where we have a mastery. We have a really good grip over what we're doing and how that translates into outcomes for our customers. So it starts with data. It starts with the analytical work of having a thesis as far as what's working and what's not. Then, and only then, do you start to think about any sort of change, right? And that change needs to be thoughtful. It needs to have a constructive path, and it needs to be really defensible. Like, what are the principles that you're going to share with your team or share with your organization as to why?
Can you give examples of, let's say, what worked during the pandemic and now post-pandemic, what's working, like what the trend has been now?
Well, I think it's a little too early to know what the trend is, because I think we're still just getting honestly, right at the beginning of Q3, when you started to see interest rates creep up, there was a lot of macro trends that are really even just now starting to raise into the broader economy. So it's really hard for me to say, to give you a before and after of pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic yet. I think that we are keeping an eye on lots of moving pieces. Some of them have to do with, I'll give you an example, like product mix. So we have hundreds of products within Google Cloud. Are there relationships between the types of tools that the customer uses and the nature of their relationship with us? Like there's stuff there, there's insights to be yielded about how the team is structured and kind of what outcomes that creates. There's lots of different ways to kind of slice that stuff, but I think it's very early to be able to understand in any formal way what that outcome will be, or what change that could yield for us. Because I think we're just still gathering information like everybody.
Can you talk a little about sales pipeline management? Let's talk about, when do you focus on sustaining it versus when do you focus on building velocity before, during, and after any period of uncertainty?
Yeah, pipeline management is it's the hard work that has to be part of your day to day. It's kind of the things you have to really you have to create a lot of muscle memory around to make sure that you're doing all the right things to bring new customers or bring new workloads or new opportunities, so to speak, new things to work on into the very, very early stages. So how are you building out a machine for that? Is that working with BDRs, or is that doing, just having the rhythm of outreach yourself? Is that expanding the universe of people you talk to at a customer that you already know? Kind of what is your method based on the customers that you serve today and the nature of the relationships that you have? And there's a whole bunch of, kind of subcategories to that around what is the right message and what is the right cadence and who you're reaching out to and why and how are you following up and what media are you using. So there's lots of pieces there. So think of sort of the top of funnel activity is something that we need to be paying rigorous attention to and coming back to, because I think there's a lot of temptation to take your eye off the ball when you have mature customers who are taking your cycles away to focus on deals or solving problems for them, which is a different category of effort that you have to invest in. And then there's a velocity sector or velocity piece of this, which is okay, of the things that you've brought into the funnel, what's moving and what's not, and why? Is this a question of us trying to create something where there's nothing there? Is this something where, yes, there's something there, but the timing isn't right? Or yes, there's something there, but there's something missing about what the customer wants at this moment in time, and how do we react to that? And it comes back to that data. Like if things are stuck in stage 0, stage 1 for too long, is that something that's within our control, or is that something that we can influence or change, or is that something where we're best suited to kind of go back to the drawing board and reinvest in building the funnel? And then lastly, once you kind of get from early, middle to late, then it really is around just sort of deal management and relationship management of, are we on the same journey together? Have we done all the right work to build a mutual language and a mutual understanding of the process in getting to a point of a decision and execution and implementation? So, you really have to have rigor, and you have to have discipline, and you have to have a methodology that works for you in the moment with your territory, your group of customers, in the moment of maturity that those customers fall within across the board. And if you can really invest well in that, I think that you can build a very strong long-term career in selling.
So, Aaron, what would you say then are those key investment areas to focus on during any economic uncertainty?
I think going as broadly as you can. I think that it's really important to. Let me give you an example. If you're in this world of infrastructure technology sales, it is very tempting to talk to the practitioners who use the tools and the managers of those practitioners. So your CTO, director of DevOps, VP of technology, CIO, et cetera. And that will serve you in a lot of different situations. However, you are missing a massive opportunity if you're not talking to the CFO organization, the sales organization, the marketing organization, the strategy organization within those companies, and weaving a cohesive message about what the value the practitioners are going to get out of using your tool. So, you asked, how are we thinking about this? It's ensuring there's a strong diversification effort in who is hearing your message, and a personalization effort to ensure that that message is tailored in such a way that it makes sense and is meaningful, and not just meaningful, but like worthy of inspiring change amongst all those different parties, so that when you're not in the room, when you're not in their office, when you're not walking the halls of that organization, they're talking about you, they're talking about us, they're talking about the opportunity for innovation. If you're doing that really well, then a lot of the heavy lifting is going to be done for you, because they're kind of getting behind a cause that you're inspiring there. So I think that, how do you develop those skills? How do you develop that rigor? It kind of comes back to that pipeline management piece that we were just talking about before. It doesn't necessarily have to be just about technology practitioners who are involved in your pipeline building. Like, are you going after the CFO organization on a cost optimization story? Right? Are you calling a CFO of a company saying, hey, I know you guys spend money on technology. We want to help you be more efficient. We understand the macro environment. Let's have a dialogue about it. Here's what we do for other companies. We're in this situation. That is not the same thing as saying, hey, this product within Google Cloud, this container management solution is going to help you ship applications faster. Like, those are two very diverse messages happening at the same company at the same time. That will yield you way more.
All those sections are probably so appreciative when you're asking for their opinion, because as you said, your product may work one way for one area, and then for another team it works another way, and if they feel forgotten, they're like, but we need this is what we want to, how we want to benefit from it. So definitely everyone has to work together to, for that mutual goal, for your product to work as well.
Yeah, and I think that you bring up an important point, Joy, which is they're going to be excluded from your selling motion until a moment where all of a sudden they get included in it. And it's up to you to just to define how they are included and define what their role is and define, like, either you can own your story or someone else is going to own it for you. So I'll give you the example of the CFO and the technology practitioner. Sell, the technology practitioner, you get to a decision point, and then the finance org gets involved with zero context, or zero, interest or buy-in to what you're doing. So if you're doing both of these at the same time, when it comes time for them to actually do something, you have two willing participants and not just kind of one that's being dragged along by the other. So that's the difference between good and great in my view.
What are some key steps to rebuilding sales teams during a period of uncertainty, and what have you found works?
Yeah, I think it starts with principles. What are we for and why? And those principles can be based on the data of what has gotten us to a certain point in the growth and the maturity of the organization, and what is still missing, or where do we need to invest more today in a way that maybe we didn't have to before. So once you have those foundational principles, then it's about who within the organization represents those principles in lots of different ways, right? You want to have people attaching themselves to the parts of your strategy that are best suited to their skill and their interest. And how are you organizing as a leader to sort of inform that, but also kind of getting some input from them to make sure that they view whatever change may come as a part of their career growth, right? I mean, I think that's universally true, that you want a willing and eager participant in the growth of your organization if you're going to make any types of change. And then I think the third piece of it is getting super clear about how you're going to meter and measure the performance of all of that. What does success look like? Why? How do we land on that? How are we going to perform our check-ins and our own accountability as leaders to make sure that what we thought was going to work from a metering and measuring perspective is, and we're getting the outcomes that we want. And then lastly, how do you need to communicate about all this? Because I think the words matter, right? Your word choices matter enormously in moments of change. And making good word choices is the difference between getting buy-in and focus versus spinning people off into, distraction. So a lot of that has to come through really strong leadership and really, really thoughtful and deliberate planning.
So as we wrap this up, from a culture perspective then, Aaron, what are the essentials for sales teams post periods of change?
Having a good sense of what you set out to do at the beginning of a period of time, let's say it's a year for the sake of conversation, why you are going after those things, and then kind of what happened over the course of those 12 months and where you ended up, is a really useful tool of self-reflection. So I would lead to say self-awareness and tools for self-reflection are probably the most important thing. It's like, what did you gain from a moment of change, from a moment of adversity, from a moment where you were uncomfortable? How are you going to become a student of yourself and of your profession by virtue of having your eyes open over a period of time where change occurred? And if I think about our team, like the group that I'm fortunate enough to be a part of and lead, every year we start out, with our strategy, and each person kind of gets up in front of their group to a round of applause to say, "This is what I want to do. This is who I want to be representing the organization. This is who I want my customers to think of us as, and this is how I'm going to go after it." And some of those are tactical, and some of those are broadly audacious. And we want to come back, and I intend to come back right now and in this time period to say, well, let's see, like what worked and what didn't, and what was within our control and what wasn't, and how is that going to then inform how are we going to become better athletes in 2023 as a result. So I think there's a very short answer to your question, Joy, which is self-awareness and reflection. But finding your process for that is probably where the real work exists, and it's probably unique for every organization and company.
Aaron, thank you so much for sharing those sales strategies. We truly appreciate it. Once again, Aaron Reinitz, Head of Sales with New York Enterprise Digital Natives at Google Cloud. Thanks, Aaron. And we hope you enjoyed this episode of the CXO Masterclass.